Okay, we'll get going. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this event tonight, an introduction to the Wallan Regional Park, which is hosted by the Wallan Regional Parkland Alliance. To start with, I'd like to acknowledge that the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people as traditional custodians of the country on which the Wallan Regional Parkland occurs. I'm beaming in from Taungurung country, just to the north, and I acknowledge that some attendees and presenters may be presenting from maybe attending from other parts of the country, other traditional lands of other First Nations. We pay our respects to all traditional custodians and their elders past, present and emerging. Just before we proceed with the actual webinar, just do some housekeeping. So first of all, I'd like to point out we are recording tonight's webinar. So with this in mind and to assist in making sure it runs as smoothly as possible, I'd like you to firstly keep your video and microphone switched off for the presentation. And secondly, if you have any questions, please post them in writing using the chat function. I'd encourage you to post the questions as they come up to you as you go along. We'll try to get through as many as possible. The questions will be answered at the end of both presentations. The presentations will be by Rob Eldridge and also Anne McGregor. My name is Paul McGregor. I'm the president of the Bean Mitchell Environment Group, and our organisation is part of the newly formed Wallan Regional Parkland Alliance. And the organisation putting on this tonight. I'm hosting tonight's webinar, and we have Yasmin Kelson from the Merry Creek Management Committee assisting with technology in the background, and some of you may have spotted her at the beginning of while you were waiting for us to start. So the Wallan Regional Parkland Alliance, recently formed, is made up of 4 organisations at the moment: the Wallan Environment Group, Merry Creek Management Committee, Friends of Merry Creek, and Bean Mitchell Environment Group. We've now launched our campaign to establish the Wallan Regional Parkland in Melbourne's north. This parkland, at 3,000 hectares in the upper reaches of the Merry Creek and its tributaries, will showcase the unique landscape of the Wallan region, combine extensive wetlands and ancient volcanic cones, provide habitat for water birds and wildlife, and create a much needed space for the local community to explore nature, stay healthy and active. Our key ask as the Alliance is that the state government commit to establishing the Wallan Regional Parkland as a priority. Now I'd like to introduce our main speaker for this event, Rob Eldridge, local campaigner, former Mitchell Shire councillor and a key driver of the Alliance. Rob has been advocating for the park's establishment since 2010, 15 years, sterling effort, through his work with the Wallan Environment Group and long-term commitment to the local region. He has contributed to a vision for this parkland that balances conservation, recreation and cultural heritage. Rob's passion for the region's volcanic landscape and waterways is evident, and we look forward to hearing more. Over to you, Rob.
Thank you very much, Paul, for the nice introduction, and welcome everybody to the first webinar for the Alliance. It's my pleasure to present tonight because for those who do know me, this is a long-term passion and I love talking about it. So I'll proceed from there. One of the things that strikes me about when I talk to people about the park is where exactly is it? So I'm hoping you have now in front of you the map showing the various wetlands and creek lines. Just to get an idea of the extent of it, at the north of that parkland, proposed parkland, you're talking about Darrowheat Road. On the west side is Old Sydney Road down here. On the east, it's Merryang Road, Epping Road. And on the south, the Calcallo portion almost goes to Donnybrook Road. So we're talking an enormous footprint within which we will have this park. Those parklands will service a growth area, which will include probably close to 200,000 people at its final completion. So if you have any questions on that, I ask you to put on the chat session so we can answer them later and move on to the next slide. So the background of this is, and as Paul's mentioned, we've been doing this for a long time. And it's been many people involved. Support we've had from Merri Creek Management Committee has been fantastic. Obviously, Wallan Environment Group, we're the ones that sort of ran with the idea initially. And I'm sure there's some Mitchell Environment Advisory Committee members on tonight, so they've been heavily involved. Friends of Merri Creek, Mitchell Shire Council is very supportive. And I must mention Nature Glenelg Trust, who is a wetland restoration group down in down Glenelg Riverway. So they've been fantastic in terms of promoting this through submissions to government. So the drivers for the park, like it's a bit of background. When we first moved up here, one of the things that I was really taken with was the fact that we had wetlands here, we had volcanic cones, and it was such a beautiful area. And then we're talking about being included with the urban growth zones, and we're now talking about housing lots, down to 300, 400 square metres, a lot of runoff, a lot of people with nowhere to go in terms of open space. So the drivers for the parkland were from those beginnings, and it's a critical lack of open space in the south of Mitchell Shire. Climate change and urban runoff is going to create enormous problems. We'll catch on to that later. An underestimated driver is also people need wild spaces to connect with nature, and it's an undervalued area with people's mental health. So I think that's one of the things that is a little bit in the background, but it could be the most important part of it. From an environmental point of view, it's going to play a critical role in the Merri Bio Corridor, which will run from the Yarra River up all the parklands of the Merri, up through to this park, over the divide, link with the Broken catchment, the Goulburn catchment, and so on. It's also an economic opportunity, so it'd be easy to dismiss the fact that it's really environmental only and it's a parkland. We have significant wetlands here of national significance. We have people who come from interstate and overseas to visit the Werribee treatment plant for all the bird life there, and it's just a natural extension to include this wetlands in that. It's on the train line, and it makes sense that that would form part of that. And finally, those who know me will know I'm not very happy about the level of urban growth. And part of this is to make the area a destination for families and not a desperation. The vision is connect people with nature on a regional scale. So with this parkland, as you saw from the first map, it's embracing most of the growth areas so that people will have an opportunity to get to these areas fairly close to home. Beyond that, though, it's actually on the linkage to other parklands, and I would envisage this being people of Seymour and as far as down as probably Brunswick would come up to this parkland to experience the wildness of it. And that's one of the things I want to make sure we keep, is that some of that wildness. So the park would include, and if you look at the original map, it's such a big job to try and put all of the features onto the one map. But it would include the restoration of the Wallan and Beveridge wetlands, volcanic cones, restoration of the creeks, Stratheg Creek through Burrumbullock, and I'll get to the wetlands later. The eastern ridge line along Old Sydney Road, which runs along Old Sydney Road adjacent to Stratheg Creek. That's the best remaining remnant vegetation in the area. So it would include those, obviously, as part of the park. It would include trails up each of the 5 creeks in Wallan, with connections to the Merry Trail, to the Melbourne and the Bendigo Trail. So from a recreational point of view, you have a connection between Melbourne down at the Yarra Trail, through the Merry Trail, up through here, through Heathcote, up to Bendigo. So it provides a great linkage for our recreational cyclists and walkers. Would create a buffer zone between Wallan and Beveridge, because when Wallan was originally put into the urban growth zone, the idea was to try and keep some sort of country character up here, and it would include some of that buffer zone. And the last one is, it's an interesting one because the Yarra Valley water treatment plant down at Wallan has a 1K buffer zone. They've been very supportive of this vision, and they recently, a couple of years ago, carried out a sample run of what it would be like if they restored some of the wetland to the south of them. So they flooded the area, and within 12 months they had swans that were nesting there and a lot of the bird life returning. So while it looks like it's just an empty area, it has the seeds and the facilities to grow lots of plants and to draw the wildlife in. I've covered a lot of that. Beveridge Intermodal is an interesting one. For those who don't know, down on the southeast corner of Mitchell Shire, adjacent to Whittlesea and the Hume, there is going to be an interstate intermodal freight terminal. That covers 600 hectares of what would have been park. That area will be subject to development, but they don't need the whole 600 hectares. It fronts onto the Merry Creek. So they're very happy and very willing and able to turn that area into, try to restore it into its natural state. So we have them on board with that, and that would form part of this regional park. Would also include Hearns Swamp. For those who don't know, Hearns Swamp is 600 hectares, or it was, running from pretty much Mount Fraser up past Whittlesea Road. So there's a clay quarry proposed on the Epping Road, and it would go past that all the way up towards the station and beyond. So it's quite a large area. Park linkages, I've covered most of those. The vision is to have linkages to areas that create or draw people to them. So Old Sydney Road with its remnant vegetation, the rail trails, the volcanic cones. There's not many places that you can go and visit a volcanic cone in the Melbourne metropolitan area. There would be trails along the 5 creeks of Wallan. So all of those would be biolinks, but also they'd have riding trails and nature trails along them. Quinn's Cottage and Walnowing and Camula Homestead are on the Epping Road side of things. For those who don't know, Quinn's Cottage is Ned Kelly's grandparents' home. Some seem to think that it was where he was born. So it is heritage listed, as is the Walnowing Homestead, which is just a stone's throw away. And also park linkages would include Epping Road, so you could come in from Epping Road. I envisage that possibly those cottages could be turned into visitor centres, cafes, have heritage exhibitions, etc. So there's a lot of linkages, not just in terms of access, but also in terms of the linkages to the old style wetlands where they were used, and both by the Aboriginals and by the Europeans. So the park advantages, I've sort of covered off on all of this, but it doesn't hurt to go over it. There'd be an intergenerational legacy. It's actually an opportunity to establish a landmark intergenerational tourist destination. It would re-establish a wetland of national significance and link with planned trails throughout Victoria. This would be a tremendous legacy for our children and our grandchildren and beyond. So this isn't something that we envisage would happen overnight, but we see it growing like a tree, I guess, in time to become something that is just unbelievably valuable to the future generations. Conservation mecca for flora and fauna. There are endangered species along the creek line and up through this area. There's threatened species. And it's also already, before the urban development starts, there's already a corridor comes up through that area and up over the divide. So it's by making and returning this to its natural state, you're actually creating opportunities to for movement of wildlife and actually to stop extinctions. So for those who know a bit about extinctions, a lot of it comes from lack of habitat, but also it comes back to a genetic base. So if it's too small an area for the particular species and they can't move around, then the genetic diversity is impacted. I've covered off on a few of these. Regional economy and tourism. The one I particularly like to mention is flood buffer, and Anne McGregor will be picking up on that soon. One of the things that I don't think the agencies up until recently have actually, the government agencies recently come across is the fact that with climate change, you're going to have very large events with either severe droughts or severe storms, which will flood areas. If you add onto that 200,000 people, which you probably equate to about 80,000 houses, each with footpaths, driveways, roofs, all of that flooding stormwater comes into this creekway and channels in around about the same place into the Merry Creek. So you have an amphitheatre of water feeding into the creek at basically one point. And that could have severe consequences for the downstream low end of the Merry. So as I said, Anne McGregor will cover that later. I don't think I can even envisage the full visual amenity that would have once it's finished. It's on such a scale that it's almost hard to get your mind around. But I think that's one of the things that as you drive around Victoria, we all have our favourite spots where you come up over a rise or you come around a corner and you see something that just blows you away. And that's how I see this. It's something that is very special. Climate change again, one of the biggest impacts of climate change is going to be the heat. And you put into that all the hard surfaces and roofs, which beggars belief most of them are still dark colour. And it's going to be a heat sink. Sorry for that. So that creates a heat sink. And the one thing that wetlands does very well is to actually create evaporation and cooling conditions. So from a purely human environmental point of view, it's going to mitigate the absolute heat that's going to come with climate change. Outstanding health benefits. One of the problems with when you've got such a huge number of people in small lots is getting people to get out and do some exercise or have a mental health break. With all the trails, I'd envisage that the active recreational areas would abut this regional park. You'd have people playing footy who could then just sort of carry on and go into the wilder areas, go for walks, wind down a bit. So I think, from a health point of view, we shouldn't underestimate the value of these sort of parks. And finally, the protection of the rich social heritage. The Wurundjeri would have used this area extensively. Before they drained the swamps, there would have been probably close to 700 or 800 hectares of wetlands during the winter months. There would have been bird life, there would have been eels, there would have been all sorts of food. And throughout the stony rises around the wetlands, there would have been camps. Those heritage items haven't been discovered yet, but we have had Aboriginals have a look at the area and say, without doubt, that would be what would have been happening. So we need to capture that. You also got the heritage that's provided by the Twins Cottage, Wallan Cottage and Camilla. So it's really trying to create a package where there's something of value for the whole community in having this park. It doesn't matter what your interests are, whether it's reading a book in the shade of a tree, walking, history. The hope would be that there's something in this that everybody could take away. So Wallan wetlands, I probably should have put this slide a bit earlier. So wallan is Woiwurrung for large circular place of water, and it refers to the extensive wallan network of swamps that dominate the circular plain below Pretty Sally. So you can imagine standing on Pretty Sally 100 years ago plus, and looking down over there, you've got an amphitheatre of hills surrounding flat plains of swamps. It would have been a magnificent sight. Hearn Swamp is the largest of the swamps, and that's the one that Woollahra Waters is built on. And that extends from northeast of the railway station, right down to Epping Road, across to Mount Fraser and back over to nearly across to Northern Highway. So that was a very big swamp, and it contains stony knoll grasslands, plains grasslands, woodlands, and seasonal wetlands, and would have been held water for 6 months of the year. And for those who have seen some of the photos that have been taken of the swamps in Wallan over the years, just normal rain events create swamplands, brings them back. So Burrumbullock is the photo that we've got at the back there. That used to be called Hannah's Swamp, and that's on the southwest side of Wallan. And before the flow changes to the creeks happened, Strathaired Creek joined into the top of Burrumbullock, and that wetland would be there most of the time during the winter times. This photo was taken normal time of the year, October actually. We had just normal couple of days of rain. That fills up, and you can see coming out of the bottom end of that, the old Strathaired Creek path down the valley. That has been by the Aboriginals, that's been identified as something of significance. So we're very confident that that will be retained. Mead Swamp, for those who have driven through Wallan on a very wet winter's day, Mead Swamp straddles the Northern Highway and the Taylors and Strathaired Creeks, and you end up driving through about a foot of water for a few hundred metres. So that's Mead Swamp. And Camilla Swamp covers about 100 hectares to the southeast of Hearn Swamp on the Merry Creek. So that's further down towards Whittlesea area. Just a quick one, that's regional waterways and in-stream wetlands. I won't dwell on that too much. But you can see Strathaired Creek into Hannah's Swamp. You've got Taylor's Creek, Mead Swamp. So you can trace the creeks feeding down into Hern Swamp, and then you can see Merry Creek going through the right-hand side of Hern Swamp there. So it's a significant area. You can see between Hannah Swamp and Hern Swamp there, that's Spring Hill. That's where they're going to put a quarry, which much to my consternation and many others, but there will be a quarry on that Spring Hill. So there's a look at Hern Swamp after normal winter rains. That was probably about 5 years ago. In the foreground, you have Woollahra Waters, well named, and beyond that is Hannah Swamp. So you can see that it's quite an extensive wetland even now. That's my presentation for the moment. I'm sure there's lots of questions, and I trust you'll put them in the chat for later. I'm happy to field questions even after the chat session. Hopefully we'll have somewhere on the Alliance website where people can ask questions. It's a lot to take in. I've tried to keep it fairly broad. So yeah, thank you everyone.
Thanks so much, Rob. A great explanation of the idea, the proposal, and the possibilities of the wetlands. Now I'd like to introduce Anne McGregor, OAM, today representing the Friends of Merry Creek, and she'll be covering off on some of the reasons why the new parkland will be so important for the southern parts of the Merry Creek catchment down in the inner suburbs. Anne's advocacy and contribution to the Merry Creek has been lifelong, resulting in transformative change for the waterway. This has included advocacy for the Upper Merry Parklands, of which the Wallan Regional Parkland will be the final piece. Over to you, Anne.
Thank you, Paul, and good evening, everybody. So the Friends of Merry Creek and the Merry Creek Management Committee have been advocating for and strongly supporting Rob's vision for the Wallan Regional Parklands for many years, for all the excellent reasons that Rob has outlined to you this evening. But my job now is to explain a bit more about why they're important for us folk who live down in the lower parts of the Merry catchment, as many of the Friends of Merry Creek live down this way. And Rob's already referred to the flooding issue and the important role of storing floodwaters that the wetlands in our proposed Wallan Park perform after intense rainfall events. The image on the left of your screen is Merry Creek flooding in Brunswick, so it does happen quite frequently, with climate change bringing more intense storms, and also with urbanisation of a lot of the middle and upper catchment happening over the next few decades. That rapid runoff is only likely to exacerbate that flooding downstream. And on the right-hand side, the image there is just an extract from the City of Marybeck planning scheme, the land subject to inundation overlay, that light blue colouring. And if you look carefully, there's quite a number of house properties, residential properties that are under that overlay. So that's with current situation. That's not with modelling using climate change inbuilt into the models. So we're rather concerned about that flooding issue down in these parts, and we certainly want to retain the flood storage capacity of those wetlands that Rob's been talking about up near Wallan. There's another good reason, which I don't have a slide for, but I coordinate bird surveys in the lower part of the catchment up between Craigieburn and Clifton Hill. And as Rob mentioned, the Merry Creek corridor and the other waterways in the catchment are all really important movement corridors for our birds. A lot of them migrate, in fact, various migration patterns in Australia, but a lot of them come come south for the spring, summer to breed, and they often move through the Kilmore Gap in the dividing range, past Wallan and down the creek corridor or down the grasslands in our upper and middle catchment. And we want to keep those birds coming down to our areas. We enjoy looking at them and appreciating them in Northcote and Coburg and Craigieburn and Clifton Hill. So that's another good reason to retain a habitat corridor with parkland and open space along our waterways. So a third very good reason for the Wallan Regional Parkland from our point of view down in the lower catchment is to provide opportunities for long distance recreation in the sense of maybe hiking or bike riding from our suburbs northwards towards Wallan. People might not want to go as far as that, but they can ideally be able to do multi-day hikes to Wallan and beyond, all through parkland one day. And the map on the right shows you the Marambubba parkland, the Marambubba Mary Creek Regional Parklands, which have been planned by the state government. Some of them exist. The blue areas exist. The purple areas are proposed, intended to become parkland over the next few decades as those suburbs develop. So they'll be the connection between the existing Mary Creek parklands south of the Ring Road and the Wallan Regional Parkland. So as Rob said, a connected set of corridors along the waterways, both the Mary Creek and Calcallo Creek over to the west there, through the green area, which is the Calcallo retarding basin, and then up along Calcallo Creek. So we'll have a connected set of parklands running from Wallan downstream along through the Mary Creek catchment right down to the Yarra Birrarung. So that would be, I think, an amazing achievement and legacy. That it's going to take quite a long time to actually see it happening on the ground, but I think well worthwhile to support. So I think that's enough from me. I'll pass you back to Paul.
Thank you, Anne. Very important to connect up the southern and the northern part of the catchment area and the creek and the biosphere of those two regions together. We've now got time for some questions, and we have a few questions in the chat. Keep adding more if you like. So the first question comes from Mark, and he mentioned, he's referring to the clay quarry that you mentioned earlier on, Rob, south of Hearn Swamp, and he asked where exactly will that clay quarry be going?
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Mark, for the question. So it's based off Epping Road, Merrying Road, and it's almost due east of the treatment plant, the Wallan treatment plant, sewage treatment plant. So it covers from there and north, and that was approved for probably 7 or 8 years ago now. I think the council opposed it, and it went to VCAT and was overturned. So that itself is basically operational only about 6 months of the year. When the water table's up, which given that it's on a basalt plain, is a lot of the time, they won't be able to work the clay to get it out. So, and they need to have a lot of buffering to stop the clay from getting into the creek. So that's pretty broadly where it is. On that same block of land, or on that same property, Quinn's Cottage and Wellnowring Homestead. So that's where the parkland is.
Is there a lifetime to that quarry? Do you know how long they're likely to be digging out from that area, Rob?
Is there a what, sorry?
Is there an end date? Like how long, how many years or decades will that quarry be active? Do you know?
It was far beyond when I was really concerned about it. So it's really a backup quarry for the Craigieburn Coral Quarry. There hasn't been any works on it yet, so I think it's one of those things that as needed, they'll start it, but it's quite a big investment they'll have to make in it. And one of my thoughts was that if they're going to be digging holes, they may as well leave them there and we can have some deeper parts of the wetland, but that's a long way off.
Thank you. Now, the next question is from Beth. Beth asks, would there be campgrounds planned for parts around the regional parkland? She says that everyone who visits me from Melbourne usually stays the night because of the travel. Having camping grounds would probably encourage more visitors. And I think you, Anne, mentioned it'd be great to be able to do multi-day hikes up through the valley. So yeah, campgrounds could be good there too. So any thoughts on that, Rob?
Yeah, it's a very good question, because that's exactly what my thinking is. That on the trail there, you could ride up from Melbourne. I don't envisage, your big four caravan park or anything like that, but some rough camping or some fairly fundamental camping, and people could cycle there overnight, go up to Bendigo and come back. So I think it's a great idea. I think it captures a niche market that there aren't really any other places in Melbourne you can do that. So yeah, fully support that. Great idea.
I'll just jump a bit over to, because Beth has followed up with a question about the quarry. She's asking, will the quarry be contributing offsets towards this parkland?
The easy answer is no. Quarries traditionally are seen as essential services almost, and as we found out from the quarry they're going to put on Spring Hill, it sort of gazumps everybody else, including schools and connector roads. So no, they won't be contributing anything, unfortunately. It'd be great if they did.
Or maybe we can encourage them. So the next question is from Alex, is asking, how can localised farmers, growers and their allies in organisations and community justice participate in the evolution and intersectional growth of the parkland, bringing their skill sets and networks, etc.?
Yeah, that's another very good question. I'd never thought of it from that point of view. And I guess most of the parkland is in urban growth zone, pretty much all of it actually. So the adjacent farmland is a bit few and far between, but I'd very much welcome anybody who's got some great ideas on this. I mean, farmers, if anybody knows about floods and drought, it's farmers. So I'm sure they've got some ideas of how to go about a lot of this, and I'd encourage them to get involved with the Alliance and sign the petitions so that we can make this a reality.
I'd add that some of the local land care groups are interested in joining the Alliance. That's the whole thing you can think about, Alex, is any organisations in the topic that you're talking about, if they want to join the Alliance, then please log on to our website and you'll see the method for joining there. Now, the next question is from Verity. She's asking, has anyone modelled the potential flooding in the southern areas of the Merri with climate predictions? Has the state government done this?
Do you want to take this, Anne, or do you want me to take this one?
I can give it a go. The short answer is Melbourne Water. You might be aware that Melbourne Water has produced new flood maps for most of Melbourne's suburbs recently, but that's only stormwater runoff flooding. It's not the riverine flooding, the floodwaters from creeks and rivers. And they haven't done the modelling for the Merri Creek, given that a lot of our catchment, middle and upper catchment, is going to be urbanised. They haven't looked at either the urbanisation impacts nor the climate change impacts. So it's something we're actively discussing with them about how we can see that modelling done, because we think it's pretty important.
Yeah, and it'd be fair to say that members of the Alliance have been lobbying Melbourne Water for some time to do a hydrology study of the area. I think at the moment they're floundering a bit to catch up. Their current modelling only includes current urbanisation. So they have no model that includes the projected growth that's already in approved subdivisions. So yeah, it's a worry.
Next question from Rhonda. She's asking, just over the railway line on the Beveridge Road, I presume that you mean going east, there is a major works happening. Is this, she's asking, is this the intermodal rail link?
Yep, that's pretty much it. They're supposed to be operational by the end of this year in a step sense or a phase sense. So yes, that's pretty much where it's going to be, including jobs at the intermodal and run offshoots of that. There's supposed to be about 20,000 jobs created by that. So it will be a major contributor to employment, but they've got a very good track record in restoration of wetlands. They've done a similar thing in Sydney. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it pans out.
Frank has asked the big question, what needs to occur for this proposal to become a reality? Go, Rob.
Yeah, so the alliance is basically the first step is to get the politicians on board and get them to legislate to agree to the Parkland going ahead. Now, we're not at this stage asking them to deliver it straight away. We all know the financial state that the state's got themselves into. So what we're aiming to do is get them to commit to it. And from there, hopefully we can get some money put aside and they can start planning it. It's more important that it's actually committed to and it's included in the urban planning than it is to get it straight away. As I said, it's an intergenerational parkland. So the main thing is to get it nailed down so that we don't build houses on it. So yeah. Now on that, if you go into the website for the Alliance, you'll see a QR code there, which will take you to the petition. And we have Ros Spence, who is the local member for a lot of Wallan and South. So that's she's going to take the petition and present it to Parliament on our behalf. So if as many people as you can sign that petition, that would be great.
Okay, that's all the questions that the participants have put in tonight. So does anybody else have any questions they want to put in? John Robinson's got a comment, not a question. The railway line in Wallan comprises part of the western boundary of the Upper Plenty Mary Catchment's Landcare Group. Given that Herne Swamp covers this part of Landcare Group's area, could look at getting this group involved in the alliance, and that's exactly what they're looking at doing. I understand here today. Now, Mark's also asked, can you sign the petition without disclosing addresses? And unfortunately, no, you can't do that. That's the way it goes with parliamentary petitions. But they do, you may talk a bit more about Yasmin, but I understand that they are thoroughly confidential with that information.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Yeah, that's my understanding. Yep.
Now, Verity has asked, does Minister Kilkenny, the Planning Minister, have the final say? Rob, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, Anna can come in and over the top of me if I get anything wrong, but I think she will have a big say in it. I think the Environment Minister will have some say. He's not that active with the environment, so I think Kilkenny will have a big say. But I think it'll go to caucus. I think it'll be one of those things that's fought out a bit, and a lot of that will be around cost. At the moment, Minister Kilkenny doesn't seem to be looking at acknowledging the parkland in the precinct structure plans that are being developed for the new areas in the south of Mitchell. So she would have to have a very big say, I would say. Anne, anything on that?
Well, I could add a slightly more optimistic note. At least one precinct structure plan that we're engaging in at the moment, they are definitely acknowledging the not just the Marambaba parklands planned, but also the Wallan Regional Parkland and the link up Calcallo Creek. That's Merrifield North precinct. So I think.
Yep, I wasn't aware of that, so that's great.
Yeah, the planners in the state government have got the message. So yeah.
Great. Well done.
And if you want to follow up a little bit, some people may not know about the way in which precinct structure plans divide up the area that we're talking about into little bits that get planned one at a time. Do you want to just explain that briefly to people?
Yes, it's complicated. I don't know whether I can do justice to it, but the urban growth boundary, which has been designated around Melbourne, includes a northern growth corridor which extends northwards from Craigieburn and up almost includes Wallan as well. Now it goes all the way up throughout Merri Creek catchment to Wallan. Within that northern growth corridor, there's a reasonably arbitrary drawing of boundaries of creating precincts, and each precinct is getting a precinct structure plan which sets out the main land uses within that area, so residential or housing or public open space or in industrial / employment areas. And within those precincts, the developers, who in most cases have already bought the land, have to work within those plans and those land use allocations, and they need to include, those precinct structure plans need to include the regional parkland, which has been accepted by the state government. But that's the importance of getting the Wallan regional parkland accepted with a commitment by the state government, so that it is shown on maps, all the maps that are produced for the precinct structure plans.
Yeah,
and as Robert said, not houses built on them. So that's what we want. Yeah.
We have, as I understand it, a benefit on our side is that quite a lot of the area that we'd like to have as parkland is already area that's not advisable to build on because of flood-prone capability. So it's more about connecting up those bits that are flood-prone to make a contiguous space. Is that right, Anne?
Well, Wallara Waters shows us that you can fill in swamps and build on them. So, the wetlands aren't safe.
No, they're not. And I think I go back to Eureka, where keep filling a bath with bricks and it'll eventually overflow. So I think finally the powers that be recognise that you can't keep filling in wetlands and hoping the water goes somewhere else without effect. So Wallara Waters is a legacy one that the planning minister overrode the council on. So yeah, hopefully we don't get a lot more of those.
Now, Robert has asked, can we share the presentation, please? And the answer is, it will be, it is being recorded and it will be available on the Wallan Regional Parkland Alliance website in the short-term future. Now, Mark has asked another question: will Beveridge Spring be included? It's east of the Hume Freeway.
Yeah. At this stage, I doubt it, but I know that the Shire itself is looking at parkland surrounding the spring and making that a feature. So I believe there is a master plan for that area, and there would be linkages from there to the regional park.
And that's an important point you're implying there, Robert, is that as the areas outside of what we're asking for to be the parkland, as those areas get developed in the future, the council is actually planning, when the planning authority is planning for additional parkland throughout those developments.
Yeah. With Central Beveridge, which is where this is, the old Beveridge Township, Beveridge Central comes under Mitchell Shire planning, so they're very aware of that. The new precincts come under the Victorian Planning Authority, so Mitchell Shire has some influence with that, but at the end of the day, it's the planning minister decides what gets put there. But definitely with Beveridge Central, I know that for a fact that the spring is forefront of the planning for parklands in that area.
I've got a question, Rob, following on from this one about locations of the spring. You've told me in the past that I think it was about 1939 or thereabouts, there was some blasting of a lava dam that allowed the water to drain away from the swamps. And that's why the swamps were drained. Do you want to just fill in that story a bit so people know the origin?
Yeah, look.
Why we lost the wetlands in the first place?
Yeah. So if you think back to the slide on various swamps of Wallan and the Wallan wetlands, and Wallan meaning circular place of water, that exactly was what it was 800,000 years ago, which is in geological times, like yesterday. Mount Fraser erupted and the lava flow blocked the Merri Valley. So that blockage created these wetlands as a more permanent fixture. So they would have been full of water for probably 6 or more months of the year. 1939, I'm guessing because of the war or other reasons, they were looking for more farmland, and they set some dynamite into the larval plug and blew it up and drained those wetlands so they could be used for farmland. So, yeah, it's severely altered the nature of it. But as you've seen from the photos, with the winter rain, it fills up again anyway. It's I think Nature Canal Trust did a survey of the actual layout of the land, and I think there's a 1 foot drop across the whole of Hearns Swamp. There's 1 foot in difference between across 600 hectares. So even if it is draining, it's draining very, very slowly. So it stays there for a while.
And where exactly, do you know where that dynamiting took place?
Not exactly, no. I envisaged it would be south of Mount Fraser, somewhere along there.
Okay.
But the problem is that all of these areas have been land banked for years, so they don't encourage the public on there at all. So we can only guess, but I'm sure if I looked it up, I could find it. But yeah, I don't have that information.
Okay, thank you. All right. Unless we have any more questions from people, I think we'll end the presentation. So thanks again to Rob and Anne for their really informative and entertaining presentations about the north and southern part of the catchments and why the Wetlands Regional Park land will be so important to us, the Wallan Regional Parkland. We have now an excellent overview of the process. To all of today's attendees, if you haven't already done so, please post your questions using the comment function. Oh, sorry, on the questions. So the state government is moving ahead with housing, employment and cultural industrial projects in this region. We're asking that the same focus be shown to the provision of parkland, conservation of natural areas alongside these development projects. So what we're asking the state government for is, first of all, a commitment government to deliver the Wallan Regional Parkland. That flows through then into planning decisions that will be in our favour. The second stage, which is further down the track, is delivery of funding to make the parkland happen. Delivery of the total extent of the parkland will occur over many, many years, and funding would be provided each step of the way. However, a budget is required now to commence the establishment of the park. We also need more knowledge about how to develop the parkland and why it should be developed. The regional parkland planning is best informed by good information and knowledge. Some upfront studies in particular are required to ensure adequate understanding of the values associated with the cultural parklands and their surrounds. An example of this is the need for a cultural value assessment with Wurrung people. There is also a need to better understand the cumulative effect, as we talked about earlier, as Anne and Rob mentioned, of a water regime altered by urban development across the entirety of the Mary Creek catchment. By reinstating the large natural wetland areas, the Wallan Regional Parkland has potential to assist in mitigating the impact of increased stormwater runoff on local waterways and downstream neighbourhoods. So, please sign and share the petition. You can do that through the QR code on the screen or jump onto our website to look it up. And we're having a live in-person on the ground launch event in late April, and we'll be letting you know more about that as it gets organised. So thank you again to everybody who came here today to listen to the presentation, to Rob and Anne for their presentations themselves. And also thank you to Yasmin and Emma from MCMC in the background for organising the technical support for tonight. So, thank you very much.